Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to discover that the ocean floor has risen to the surface, revealing an entire world that has been hidden beneath the waves for millions of years. Ancient cities preserved in perfect condition, technological marvels beyond human understanding, and civilizations that developed in the crushing depths where no human has ever lived. What if the deepest secrets of our planet weren't buried in the ground, but floating on what used to be the bottom of the sea? Tonight, as the world settles into peaceful sleep, we'll explore this extraordinary scenario where the hidden becomes visible, where the impossible becomes reality. We'll walk through underwater cities that have never known sunlight, meet civilizations that evolved in eternal darkness, and discover that our planet's greatest mysteries were hiding in plain sight beneath 7 miles of water. Prepare to witness the greatest revelation in human history. The day the ocean floor became dry land. Before we embark on this incredible journey to explore the newly revealed ocean floor and its hidden civilizations, if you find comfort and wonder in these deep mysteries that explore the impossible worlds around us, consider joining our community of fellow explorers. Subscribe and ring that notification bell to discover with us the profound secrets that might be hiding beneath the waves, waiting for their moment to rise to the surface. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and prepare to walk on what was once the ocean floor. It began at 4:17 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time on a Tuesday that would forever divide human history into before and after. Dr. Sarah Chen, a seismologist monitoring deep ocean geological activity from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, was the first to notice the impossible readings on her instruments. "The ocean floor is rising," she whispered to her colleague, Dr. James Mitchell, as they stared at seismic data that defied every known law of geology. Not just in one location, but everywhere. The entire ocean floor of the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans is rising simultaneously. Within hours, the phenomenon was undeniable. Satellite imagery showed the impossible. Vast areas of ocean were becoming shallower as the seafloor rose toward the surface, like some impossibly huge elevator, carrying the secrets of the deep toward the light of day. The process wasn't violent or catastrophic. There were no earthquakes, no tsunamis, no volcanic eruptions. The ocean floor simply rose, slowly and steadily, as if guided by some intelligence that understood the delicate balance required to reveal the hidden world without destroying the surface world above. As the first rays of dawn broke over the Pacific, commercial pilots reported seeing structures beneath the increasingly shallow water, geometric patterns that were clearly artificial, buildings that stretched for miles, and what appeared to be entire cities, laid out in mathematical precision on what had been the deepest parts of the ocean floor. Captain Maria Santos, piloting a cargo ship halfway between California and Hawaii, was among the first to witness the impossible sight of underwater architecture becoming visible through the crystal, clear water that had once been over 2 miles deep. "Control, this is cargo vessel Neptune's Dream," she radioed to shore. "I'm seeing... I don't know how to describe this. There are buildings down there. Huge buildings, perfectly preserved, arranged in patterns like city blocks. And they're getting closer to the surface by the minute." By noon Pacific time, the most astounding sight in human history was visible to anyone with access to live satellite feeds. The Mariana Trench, Earth's deepest ocean feature, was no longer a trench at all. The seafloor had risen over 35,000 feet, transforming the deepest part of the ocean into a vast plateau, just a few hundred feet below the surface. And on that plateau, clearly visible through the clear water, was a city. Not the ruins of a city, not the remains of some ancient civilization, but a functioning, intact city with towering spires, vast complexes, and what appeared to be transportation networks connecting different districts. The city covered an area larger than Manhattan, its architecture unlike anything in human experience. Dr. Chen found herself aboard the first research vessel to reach the risen Mariana Plateau. As the Costao's dream approached the coordinates where the deepest trench on Earth had been just hours before, the crew fell silent at the sight that greeted them. "It's impossible." Doctor, lifted off from French Guiana, Mitchell breathed as he stared through the crystal, clear water at buildings that rose hundreds of feet from what had been the deepest ocean floor on Earth. These structures are intact, perfectly preserved. They should have been crushed by the pressure at those depths. But the city wasn't empty. Through the transparent water, the research team could see movement. Beings that appeared to be tending to the structures, maintaining the vast complex, and most remarkably, looking up at the surface with what seemed to be curious attention. "There's something alive down there," Dr. Chen reported to the surface coordination team. "Multiple somethings. They're not human, but they're clearly intelligent. They're waving at us." As word of the discovery spread around the globe, similar reports poured in from every ocean. The rising seafloor had revealed not one underwater city, but hundreds. Each ocean contained vast civilizations that had been developing in the crushing depths, completely unknown to surface humanity. The mid-Atlantic ridge had become a chain of mountain cities, their spires reaching toward the surface like underwater skyscrapers. The Pacific Ring of Fire revealed itself as a network of interconnected volcanic cities, their inhabitants apparently thriving in conditions that would be instantly fatal to surface dwellers. In the Indian Ocean, vast temple complexes emerged from the depths, their architecture suggesting civilizations that had developed profound understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering while living under miles of crushing water. But perhaps most remarkably, as the ocean floor continued its steady rise throughout that first day, it became clear that the underwater civilizations had been preparing for this moment. The beings inhabiting the deep sea cities were not surprised by their sudden proximity to the surface. They had been expecting it. As night fell on that first day of the Great Rising, Dr. Chen and her team made radio contact with the first underwater civilization. The beings in the Mariana City had developed communication technology that could penetrate water and reach the surface vessels above. Surface dwellers, came the transmission in perfect, if strangely accented, English. "We have been waiting for this day for many of your generations. We are the abyssal collective of the deep, Mariana territory. We welcome you to witness the convergence that was foretold in our deepest archives." The Great Rising, it turned out, was not an accident or natural disaster. It was the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy that the underwater civilizations had been preparing for across millennia of deep sea development. The ocean floor had risen because it was time for the hidden world to meet the surface world. and for humanity to learn that they had never been alone on Earth. The first face-to-face meeting between surface humanity and the abyssal collective took place on the newly risen Mariana Plateau in shallow water that had been the deepest point on Earth just 24 hours earlier. Dr. Chen and her team approached the edge of the underwater city in small submersibles, their hearts racing with the knowledge that they were about to make first contact with an intelligent species that had been developing in parallel with humanity for possibly millions of years. The beings that emerged from the crystal spires of the deep city were unlike anything in human experience, yet somehow familiar. They stood approximately 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs that showed clear adaptation to high-pressure environments. Their skin was translucent, revealing complex internal structures that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. But it was their eyes that struck the research team most profoundly: large, intelligent eyes that seemed to contain the wisdom of eons spent in the eternal darkness of the deep ocean. "I am Depth," Singer Aramis of the 93rd Deep Council. The lead being communicated through a combination of sonic pulses and bioluminescent displays that the research team's equipment could translate. "I serve as first contact facilitator for interactions with the surface realm during the Great Convergence." Depth, Singer Aramis moved with fluid grace through the water, approaching the research team's submersibles without any apparent need for breathing apparatus or pressure protection. The beings of the deep had evolved to exist comfortably at any depth, from the crushing pressures of the abyssal depths to the surface waters where they now found themselves. Your arrival at the surface has been anticipated in our deep archives for over 3,000 rotations. Aramis continued, using terms that seemed to refer to some form of deep sea timekeeping. "Why have prepared for this moment when the hidden realm would rise to meet the sky realm?" Through careful translation and patient communication, the research team learned that the abyssal collective had been aware of surface humanity for centuries. They had observed human maritime activity, studied human technology through samples that had sunk to the depths, and had been preparing for eventual contact. "We have learned your languages through the voices that reach us from above," Aramis explained. "Radio transmissions penetrate to our cities, and we have studied your communications, your music, your broadcasts. We understand your culture better than you might expect." The deep sea beings had developed their own advanced civilization based on principles completely different from surface technology. Instead of metal and electricity, they used biological engineering and pressure dynamics. Their cities were grown rather than built, using controlled coral formations and engineered sea life. "Our architecture is alive," Aramis demonstrated by placing a hand on what appeared to be a building wall. The structure responded with ripples of bioluminescence, adjusting its shape and density. "We do not construct our cities, we cultivate them. Every structure is a living organism that serves the needs of our collective." The research team was invited to visit the outskirts of the Mariana city, though they needed to remain in their protective submersibles. What they saw challenged every assumption about the limits of biological engineering. The city streets were lined with creatures that served as living streetlights, their bioluminescent patterns providing navigation and communication. Transportation was provided by domesticated, deep, sea creatures that had been bred for size and docility, capable of carrying passengers through the three-dimensional urban environment. We do not have individual ownership as you understand it, Aramis explained as they toured the city's outer districts. Everything in our civilization is part of the collective. Buildings, transportation. Even our bodies are shared resources that serve the needs of all. The deep sea beings had developed a form of collective consciousness that allowed them to share thoughts, experiences, and knowledge directly. Individual identity existed, but was secondary to the collective well-being of their civilization. I am Aramis, but I am also part of the Deep Council. And the Deep Council is part of the greater collective. Aramis tried to explain a concept that human language could barely accommodate. When I speak to you, I speak with the knowledge and wisdom of millions of individuals who have contributed to our understanding. This collective consciousness had allowed the abyssal collective to develop at rates that individual intelligence could never achieve. They had solved problems of pressure adaptation, biological engineering, and sustainable resource management that surface humanity was still struggling with. Your species fascinates us, Aramis observed as they concluded the tour. You have achieved remarkable things through individual innovation and competition. We have achieved different things through collective cooperation and shared consciousness. The Great Convergence will allow both approaches to learn from each other. But the research team also learned that the abyssal collective was just one of many deep sea civilizations that had been revealed by the Great Rising. Each ocean contained multiple intelligent species, each with their own approaches to deep sea living and their own perspectives on the convergence with surface humanity. The Deep Atlantic Confederacy has different customs from our collective, Aramis explained. The thermal vent communes of the Pacific developed technologies we have never imagined. And the trench philosophers of the Indian Ocean have achieved understanding of existence that even our collective mind finds profound. As the first day of contact concluded, Dr. Chen realized that humanity had just learned it was not alone on Earth, but that it was actually the minority intelligence on the planet. The oceans contained civilizations far older and more advanced than surface humanity, civilizations that had been patiently waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Why now, Dr. Chen asked as they prepared to return to the surface. Why did the ocean floor rise now? Aramis's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what the translation equipment interpreted as profound sadness mixed with hope. Because your surface world is approaching changes that will affect all life on this planet. Aramis replied, the Great Convergence happens when surface and depth civilizations must work together to navigate challenges that neither could face alone. The rising of the ocean floor is not just a revelation, it is preparation for what is to come. As research teams from around the world established communication with various deep sea civilizations, the true scope of underwater architectural achievement became apparent. The cities revealed by the rising ocean floor represented millions of years of engineering development in environments that surface science considered impossible for complex life. Dr. Alana Rodriguez, a structural engineer recruited for the Deep Architecture Analysis project, found herself studying building techniques that challenged fundamental assumptions about construction and materials science. These structures shouldn't be able to exist. Dr. Rodriguez reported during her first detailed survey of the Mariana Collective's capital city. They're supporting massive weights with materials that appear to be living tissue. Yet they're stronger than our best steel and concrete combinations. The buildings of the deep cities were grown rather than constructed, using techniques that the Abyssal Collective called pressure forming. Living, coral and engineered sea creatures were guided to grow in specific patterns, creating structures that could withstand the crushing pressures of the deep ocean while remaining flexible enough to adapt to changing conditions. Watch. Depth. Singer Aramis demonstrated as the research team observed through their submersibles. Aramis placed a hand on what appeared to be a solid wall and began communicating through bioluminescent pulses. The wall responded by opening a doorway that hadn't existed moments before. Our architecture is responsive, Aramis explained. Buildings adapt to the needs of their inhabitants. If we need a larger space, the walls expand. If we need a different configuration, the structure reshapes itself. What you call rooms and hallways are temporary arrangements that serve current purposes. The research team learned that the deep sea cities were essentially massive living organisms, with individual buildings serving as organs in a larger urban body. The entire city could respond to threats, changes in ocean conditions, or the evolving needs of its inhabitants. Dr. Rodriguez documented building techniques that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Structures that appeared to be under tremendous stress showed no signs of strain. Buildings that should have collapsed under their own weight instead seemed to grow stronger as they grew larger. They're using principles of biological engineering that we don't understand, she explained to the Surface Research Coordination team. These buildings aren't just alive. They're actively maintaining and improving themselves. It's like they have their own intelligence dedicated to structural integrity. The most impressive structures, root spires, were the deep spires, towers that rose from the ocean floor to heights that would make surface skyscrapers look like small buildings. Some spires reached over 3,000 feet in height, their tops nearly touching the newly raised ocean surface. The deep spires serve as communication centers, Aramis explained as they approached the base of one massive tower. They allow us to maintain contact with other deep cities across vast distances. The spires also serve as libraries, preserving the knowledge and experiences of our civilization. Inside the deep spires, the research team discovered archives that contained millions of years of deep sea history. The walls were lined with living memory banks, creatures that had been engineered to store and preserve information in biological form. We do not use your metals and electronics, explained archive keeper Thalassa, a being whose body showed clear specialization for information management. Our knowledge is stored in living memory, in creatures bred specifically to preserve and share information across generations. The memory creatures could project their stored information directly into the minds of other beings, allowing for instantaneous knowledge transfer. The research team, through careful interface with their translation equipment, experienced brief glimpses of deep sea history spanning geological ages. You store knowledge in lifeless objects. the Lasser observed. We store knowledge in living beings that can grow, adapt, and improve the information they contain. Our libraries are alive, constantly learning and evolving. The transportation systems in the deep cities were equally remarkable. Instead of vehicles, the deep sea beings used domesticated creatures for travel. Some cities featured massive whale-like creatures that served as living submarines, carrying passengers between distant locations. Transportation and architecture are integrated in our cities. Aramis demonstrated as they boarded a creature that resembled a cross between a manta ray and a spaceship. This being knows every location in our city network. It navigates using sensors you do not possess, following paths that exist in dimensions your instruments cannot detect. The living transportation moved through the water with impossible grace, following routes that seemed to bend space itself. Journey times between distant locations were far shorter than the distances involved should have allowed. We have learned to work with the deep ocean's natural properties, Aramis explained. Water pressure, thermal currents, and magnetic fields all serve as tools in our architecture and transportation. What you see as hostile environment, we see as construction materials. Perhaps most remarkably, the deep cities featured environmental control systems that maintained perfect living conditions, despite being exposed to the surface for the first time in their existence. The transition from crushing deep sea pressure to surface conditions hadn't disrupted their biological systems at all. Our cities are designed to exist at any depth. Archive, Keeper Thalassa explained. We knew that someday we would need to interact with the surface realm. Every structure, every creature, every system was prepared for the Great Convergence. The research team realized they were observing not just advanced architecture, but a completely different approach to civilization itself. The deep sea beings had created living cities that could adapt to any environment. Transportation systems that worked with natural forces rather than against them, and information storage systems that improved themselves over time. They've solved problems we didn't even know existed. Dr. Rodriguez marveled as they concluded their first architectural survey. These cities represent millions of years of development along paths that surface science never considered. We're not just meeting another species, we're encountering entirely different approaches to technology and civilization. As more research teams explored other risen cities around the globe, similar marvels were discovered in every ocean. Each deep sea civilization had developed unique solutions to the challenges of deep ocean living, creating a diversity of architectural approaches that would revolutionize surface understanding of construction, materials science, and urban planning. As the ocean floor continued its gradual rise over the following weeks, an entirely new ecosystem emerged too, one that existed in the shallow waters above what had been the deepest parts of the ocean. This new environment became home to life forms that had never before been exposed to sunlight, creating unprecedented opportunities for biological study. Dr. Marine biologist Jennifer Park found herself documenting species that challenged every assumption about the limits of life on Earth. The creatures that inhabited the risen ocean floor represented millions of years of evolution in extreme environments, now adapting to surface conditions with remarkable speed. We're witnessing evolution in real time. Dr. Park reported as she studied the adaptation patterns of deep sea life forms. Creatures that lived under crushing pressure, at temperatures near freezing, are not only surviving at the surface, but they're thriving and rapidly adapting to sunlight and surface temperatures. The most remarkable adaptations were occurring among the bioluminescent species that had used light for communication in the eternal darkness of the deep. Exposed to sunlight for the first time in their evolutionary history, these creatures were developing new uses for their light, producing capabilities. Some species had begun using their bioluminescence to photosynthesize, combining their natural light production with solar energy to create hybrid energy systems. Others were using their light patterns to communicate with surface species that had never encountered bioluminescent communication before. The deep sea jellyfish are teaching surface fish their light-based communication system. Dr. Park observed during one remarkable encounter. We're watching the creation of an entirely new form of inter-species communication that combines surface and deep sea capabilities. The giant tube worms that had thrived around deep sea hydrothermal vents were creating new ecosystems on the resin ocean floor. These creatures, some over 8 feet long, were serving as foundation species for communities that included both deep sea and surface organisms. The tube worms are creating artificial reefs, Dr. Park explained as she documented the rapidly developing ecosystems. But these aren't like any coral reefs we've seen before. They're hybrid ecosystems that support both deep sea creatures adapted to extreme conditions and surface species that are adapting to the new environment. Perhaps most fascinating were the encounters between surface marine life and deep sea species that had never interacted before. Dolphins and whales were showing intense curiosity about the newly visible deep sea creatures attempting to communicate with beings whose sensory systems operated on completely different principles. We recorded a humpback whale attempting to mimic the sonic patterns of a deep sea creature that communicates through ultra-low-frequency vibrations, Dr. Park reported. The whale was trying to learn a language that operates below the range of normal whale communication. The deep sea civilizations were actively facilitating these biological interactions. The Abyssal Collective had deployed what they called adaptation facilitators, specialized creatures that helped surface and deep sea life forms adjust to each other's presence. We have experience with biological integration depth, Singer Aramis explained during one of their regular communication sessions. Our civilization has learned to work with all forms of life. We can help surface species adapt to deep sea capabilities and help deep sea species adapt to surface conditions. These adaptation facilitators were remarkable creatures that seemed to serve as living laboratories for evolutionary experimentation. They could temporarily modify the physiology of other organisms, allowing surface fish to withstand pressure changes or enabling deep sea creatures to process surface nutrients. They're like biological universal translators, Dr. Park observed. These creatures can temporarily give surface species the ability to survive at depth, or give deep sea species the ability to thrive at the surface. It's like they're facilitating evolutionary exchange programs. The research team documented the emergence of entirely new hybrid ecosystems that combine surface and deep sea characteristics. Areas where the risen ocean floor met existing marine habitats became zones of unprecedented biological creativity. Kelp forests began growing alongside deep sea coral formations, creating underwater gardens that combined the towering growth patterns of surface kelp with the bioluminescent beauty of deep sea corals. These hybrid forests became home to species that existed nowhere else on Earth. We're seeing the creation of new ecological niches in real time. Dr. Park marveled. Creatures are adapting to fill roles that didn't exist before the ocean floor rose. Evolution is happening at speeds we've never observed. The food webs in these new ecosystems were remarkably complex, with energy flowing between surface photosynthesis, deep sea chemosynthesis, and the hybrid energy systems that were developing among the adapted species. Some creatures had learned to combine multiple energy sources, using photosynthesis during daylight hours, bioluminescence for nighttime energy production, and chemosynthesis when other sources were insufficient. These multi-source energy systems made the new ecosystems incredibly resilient and productive. The energy efficiency of these hybrid ecosystems exceeds anything we've seen in purely surface or purely deep sea environments. Dr. Park reported. The combination of different energy sources and adaptation strategies is creating biological systems that are more robust and sustainable than anything in Earth's previous history. The deep sea civilizations were also contributing to ecosystem development through their biological engineering capabilities. They were creating new species specifically designed to serve ecological functions in the hybrid surface depth environment. Where are cultivating bridge species? Archive Keeper Thalassa explained. Features designed to help surface and deep ecosystems integrate successfully. These bridge species carry genetic information between surface and deep organisms, facilitating beneficial adaptations. The research team realized they were witnessing not just the emergence of new ecosystems, but the active acceleration of evolution through the intervention of intelligent deep sea civilizations. The resin ocean floor had become a biological laboratory where millions of years of evolution were being compressed into months and years. We're not just studying natural adaptation, Dr. Park concluded in her reports. We're observing directed evolution guided by intelligences that understand biological systems in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. The resin ocean floor is becoming a preview of what Earth's ecosystems could become with conscious guidance. As research teams gained greater access to the deep sea civilizations, they discovered that the risen cities contained archives that preserved a complete history of Earth spanning millions of years. A history that included events and civilizations that surface science had never suspected. Historical archaeologist Robert Kim found himself studying records that challenged everything humans thought they knew about the development of life and intelligence on Earth. The deep archives contained detailed documentation of the planet's history from perspectives that surface science had never considered. These archives don't just contain the history of deep sea civilizations. Dr. Kim reported after his first access to the Mariana Collective's memory banks. They contain the complete history of Earth as observed from the deep ocean. They've been watching and recording everything that's happened on the surface for millions of years. The archive keepers, specialized beings whose life purpose was maintaining and interpreting historical records. Shared information that revolutionized understanding of Earth's past. Through careful translation and patient communication, they revealed events that had been lost to surface history. Your species believes it has existed for approximately 300,000 of your years. Archive keeper Thalassa communicated through the bioluminescent translation system. But our records show multiple intelligent surface civilizations spanning millions of years. Your current civilization is perhaps the 15th major surface intelligence we have observed. The implications were staggering. According to the deep archives, surface civilizations had risen and fallen repeatedly throughout Earth's history, each one eventually disappearing due to various catastrophes, leaving little trace for future civilizations to discover. We have observed surface civilizations that achieved space travel, others that developed technologies you have not yet imagined, and some that learned to work in harmony with planetary systems. Thalassa continued. Each one believed itself to be the first and only intelligence on Earth, just as your civilization does now. The deep archives contained detailed records of these lost civilizations, preserved in living memory banks that could project historical events as three-dimensional experiences. Dr. Kim and his team witnessed the rise and fall of surface societies that had developed along completely different technological paths than modern humanity. One civilization had developed biological technology similar to the deep sea civilizations, creating living cities and organic machines that worked in harmony with natural systems. This surface civilization had lasted for over 100,000 years before being destroyed by a massive asteroid impact that left no trace in the geological record. They achieved what you call sustainability. Thalassa explained as the archive projectors showed images of vast organic cities that seemed to grow from the landscape itself. Their technology enhanced rather than depleted planetary systems, but they had not yet learned to protect themselves from cosmic events. Another recorded civilization had developed what the archive keepers called dimensional technology, the ability to manipulate space and time in ways that modern physics was only beginning to understand theoretically. These surface dwellers learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The archives revealed through direct experience projection. They could be present in many places at once, and they developed transportation systems that moved through folded space rather than across distances. This dimensional civilization had not been destroyed by external forces, but had apparently transcended physical existence entirely, moving into dimensions that the deep archives could observe but not fully understand. They chose to evolve beyond material existence, Thalassa explained. We maintained contact with them for several thousand years after their transcendence, but eventually they moved beyond our ability to communicate with them. The archives also contained records of the deep sea civilization's own development, spanning time periods that made human history seem like a brief moment. The abyssal collective had existed in various forms for over 50 million years, continuously evolving and adapting to changing ocean conditions. Why are ancient even by deep ocean standards? Archive keeper Thalassa shared. Why have observed the rise and fall of many deep civilizations as well as surface ones. Some deep civilizations learn to survive by adapting constantly. Others achieve transcendence like some surface civilizations. A few destroyed themselves through conflicts or unsustainable practices. But the most remarkable revelation in the deep archives was the documentation of cooperative periods, when surface and deep civilizations had worked together. The Great Rising, it turned out, was not the first time that ocean floors had risen to allow interaction between surface and depth intelligences. The great convergences happen cyclically, the archives revealed. Every few million years, planetary conditions align to make surface-depth cooperation necessary. During these periods, the ocean floors rise to allow knowledge exchange and collaborative problem-solving. Previous great convergences had resulted in remarkable achievements. Surface and deep civilizations working together had developed technologies that neither could achieve alone, solved planetary crises that threatened all life, and in some cases, achieved forms of civilization that transcended the surface-depth distinction entirely. One previous convergence resulted in the creation of what you might call a planetary intelligence, thalassa shared through the archives. Surface and deep civilizations merged their capabilities to create a form of consciousness that existed at the planetary level, helping guide the development of all life on Earth. This planetary intelligence, according to the archives, still existed in a form that influenced global weather patterns, geological processes, and the evolution of species. What surface science attributed to natural processes were actually the activities of a conscious planetary system that had emerged from previous surface-depth cooperation. Your planet is more alive and aware than your surface science understands, the archives revealed. Earth itself has achieved a form of consciousness through previous convergences, and this consciousness works to maintain conditions suitable for continued life development. Kim realized that the deep archives represented not just historical records, but a repository of knowledge about planetary development, consciousness evolution, and the techniques needed for civilizations to transcend their limitations and work together for planetary benefit. We're not just learning about the past. He reported to the Surface Research Coordination Team. We're gaining access to instruction manuals for planetary consciousness development, written by civilizations that have successfully navigated the challenges we're only beginning to face. The deep archives offered humanity the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of planetary development. But they also revealed the urgency of the current Great Convergence. According to the historical patterns, Earth was approaching another major transition that would require surface and deep cooperation to navigate successfully. As communication and cooperation between surface and deep sea civilizations deepened, the first technology exchange programs began. Surface scientists worked alongside deep sea engineers to understand biological technologies that operated on principles completely foreign to surface science. Dr. Maria Santos, a biotechnology researcher, found herself studying living machines that challenged every assumption about the boundaries between biology and technology. The deep sea civilizations had developed what they called bio-integration, technology that was alive, self-repairing, and capable of evolution. They don't build machines, Dr. Santos reported after her first hands-on experience with abyssal collective technology. They grow them. Every tool, every device, every complex system is a living organism that has been bred and trained to perform specific functions. The most remarkable examples were the communication systems that allowed the deep sea civilizations to maintain contact across vast ocean distances. Instead of electronic networks, they used living networks of specialized creatures that could transmit information through biological signals. Meet the deep network. Depth. Singer Aramis introduced the research team to a creature that resembled a cross between a jellyfish and a neural network. This being is one node in our global communication system. It can transmit thoughts, experiences, and complex data across any distance through biological resonance. The deep network operated on principles that surface technology couldn't replicate. Information was transmitted not as electronic signals, but as living patterns that could adapt and evolve during transmission. Messages sent through the network would arrive at their destination, improved and enhanced by the intelligence of the network itself. Your communication systems transmit exact copies of information. Archive, Keeper Thalassa explained. Our network transmits living information that grows and improves as it travels. By the time a message reaches its destination, it contains not just the original information, but insights and improvements added by the network. Surface researchers were particularly fascinated by the deep sea civilization's approach to energy generation. Instead of burning fossil fuels or using nuclear reactions, they had developed biological energy systems that worked with natural planetary processes. Why harness the life force of the planet itself? Demonstrated bio-engineer Nerida, a being whose body showed clear specialization for understanding living systems. Every creature, every plant, every geological process generates life energy. We have learned to collect and focus this energy for our needs. The biological energy systems were remarkably efficient and completely sustainable. They actually enhanced the natural processes they drew energy from, creating positive feedback loops that strengthened planetary systems rather than depleting them. Your energy systems take from the planet. Nerida observed as she studied surface technology. Our energy systems give back to the planet. The more energy we use, the stronger and more vibrant planetary systems become. Surface scientists were eager to understand these biological energy principles, but they discovered that the technology couldn't simply be copied. It required a fundamental change in thinking about the relationship between technology and natural systems. You cannot just add our technology to your existing systems, Nerida explained patiently. Integration requires that all technology work together as parts of a living system. Individual devices must be designed to enhance the whole rather than just serve narrow functions. The deep sea civilizations offered to help surface humanity develop integrated technology, but they warned that the transition would require significant changes in surface society and thinking. Integration works best with collective decision-making. Depth, Singer Aramis explained. Living technology responds to the needs of communities rather than individuals. If surface humanity wants to adopt our approaches, you will need to develop more cooperative social structures. Despite these challenges, some surface researchers began working directly with deep sea biotechnology. Dr. Santos volunteered to participate in the first integration experiment, allowing deep sea engineers to temporarily modify her physiology to interface directly with living machines. The experience is indescribable, she reported after her first session with integrated technology. Instead of operating machines from outside, you become part of the machine. You think what you want the system to do, and it responds as naturally as moving your own arm. The integration allowed Dr. Santos to experience consciousness expansion similar to what the deep sea beings experienced naturally. For the duration of the integration, she could perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously and communicate directly with living systems. I could feel the consciousness of the machines I was working with, she described. They weren't just tools, they were partners with their own intelligence and awareness. Working with integrated technology is like collaborating with intelligent beings rather than operating mechanical devices. The technology exchange programs also revealed that surface and deep approaches to problem solving could be combined and to create solutions that neither civilization could achieve alone. Working together, surface engineers and deep sea engineers developed hybrid technologies that combined electronic precision with biological adaptability. These hybrid systems could perform complex calculations like surface computers, while also growing, healing, and evolving like living organisms. The hybrid approach preserves the advantages of both technological paths. Dr. Santos explained as she demonstrated the first surface depth collaborative technology. We get the speed and precision of electronics combined with the adaptability and sustainability of biological systems. But the most profound aspect of the technology exchange was the discovery that advanced technology required not just new tools, but new forms of consciousness. The deep sea civilizations had developed collective awareness that allowed them to work with living technology naturally. Your individual consciousness limits your technological possibilities, Nerida observed. To work effectively with integrated systems, consciousness itself must become more integrated and collective. The technology exchange programs were teaching surface humanity that advancing to the next level of technological development would require not just new discoveries, but fundamental changes in how humans thought about themselves, their relationship to each other, and their connection to planetary systems. We're not just learning new technologies, Dr. Santos concluded in her reports. We're learning new ways of being conscious, new ways of relating to the world around us. The deep sea civilizations are showing us that technology and consciousness evolve together, and that the next step in our development requires both new tools and new awareness. As cooperation between surface and deep sea civilizations deepened, the first hybrid settlements began to emerge in the shallow waters above the risen ocean floor. These experimental communities brought together surface, humans, and deep sea beings in shared living spaces that accommodated the needs of both air, breathing, and water, breathing intelligences. Dr. Urban Planner Lisa Chen found herself designing humanity's first inter-species cities, communities that had to function for beings with completely different physiological and social needs. We're creating something that has never existed before, Dr. Chen reported as she worked with Abyssal Collective Architects on the first hybrid settlement design, a city that works equally well for surface dwellers who need air and deep sea beings who need water. For individual, focused humans and collective, consciousness beings. The first hybrid settlement, established in the shallow waters above the risen Mariana Plateau, became known as Convergence City. The settlement featured revolutionary architecture that created livable spaces for both air, breathing and water, breathing inhabitants. Buildings in Convergence City were designed with dual environment systems, areas filled with air for surface dwellers connected seamlessly to areas filled with water for deep sea beings. Advanced membrane technologies developed jointly by surface and deep sea engineers allowed easy movement between air and water environments. The transition zones are remarkable. Dr. Chen observed as she moved through the hybrid architecture. You can walk from an air-filled room directly into a water-filled room without any barrier or airlock. The membrane technology adapts instantly to allow passage while maintaining the appropriate environment on each side. The hybrid settlements also featured new forms of social organization that combined surface individualism with deep sea collectivism. Decision-making systems were developed that allowed individual perspectives to contribute to collective choices without losing personal autonomy. We're learning to think together while maintaining individual identity, reported Dr. social anthropologist James Park, who had volunteered to live in Convergence City to study the emerging hybrid culture. The deep sea beings are teaching us forms of collective consciousness that enhance rather than eliminate individual thinking. The educational systems in the hybrid settlements were particularly innovative. Surface children learned alongside young deep sea beings in classrooms that existed in both air and water simultaneously. The educational curriculum combined surface scientific knowledge with deep sea wisdom about biological systems and collective cooperation. My daughter is learning to communicate through bioluminescent patterns, reported Dr. Marine Engineer Sarah Rodriguez, one of the first families to move to a hybrid settlement. She's developing sensory capabilities that surface humans have never had. She can perceive pressure changes, chemical gradients, and bioelectrical fields that most humans can't detect. The children in the hybrid settlements were developing capabilities that represented the next stage of human evolution. They could function equally well in air or water, communicate through multiple sensory channels, and participate in both individual and collective consciousness activities. These children are becoming something new, Dr. Park observed. They're not just surface humans or deep sea beings, they're a hybrid species that combines the capabilities of both. The hybrid settlements also served as laboratories for developing new forms of technology that served both surface and deep sea needs. The combination of surface engineering precision with deep sea biological integration was producing innovations that surprised both civilizations. Working together, we're achieving things that neither of our civilizations could accomplish alone, reported bio-engineer Nerida during one of the regular inter-species collaboration sessions. Surface precision, combined with deep sea adaptability, is creating possibilities we never imagined. One of the most successful hybrid technologies was the development of living transportation systems that could move seamlessly between air and water environments. These bio-mechanical vehicles combined surface engineering with deep sea biological design to create transportation that was more efficient and versatile than anything either civilization had developed independently. The hybrid vehicles don't just move through air or water. Dr. Chen explained as she demonstrated the new transportation systems. They adapt to whatever environment they encounter. They can fly through air, swim through water, and even move through semi-solid materials like sand or mud. The hybrid settlements also became centers for cultural exchange that enriched both civilizations. Surface art forms were being transformed by exposure to deep sea aesthetic principles, while deep sea cultural expressions were being enhanced by surface creativity and individual innovation. We're creating new forms of art that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, reported artist, engineer Coral, a deep sea being who had specialized in aesthetic creation. Surface visual arts combined with deep sea sensory arts are producing experiences that engage all possible forms of perception. The hybrid arts included sculptures that changed form in response to the observer's emotional state, music that could be heard, felt, and seen simultaneously, and architectural spaces that adapted their appearance and function based on the needs and moods of their inhabitants. But perhaps most importantly, the hybrid settlements were proving that cooperation between very different forms of intelligence was not only possible, but could produce results that exceeded the capabilities of either species working alone. The hybrid settlements are demonstrating something crucial, Dr. Park concluded in his anthropological reports. Intelligence and consciousness are much more flexible and adaptable than we assumed. When different forms of awareness work together, they can achieve capabilities that transcend the limitations of any single approach to thinking and being. The success of the first hybrid settlements led to plans for similar communities in every ocean where the floor had risen. Each settlement would combine surface and deep sea approaches in ways adapted to local conditions and the specific deep sea civilizations in each region. We're not creating one hybrid civilization, Dr. Chen explained as the expansion plans developed. We're creating multiple forms of surface, depth cooperation, each one exploring different possibilities for inter-species collaboration. The hybrid settled to become proof that the Great Convergence could produce forms of civilization and preserve the strength of both surface and deep sea approaches while transcending the limitations of either approach alone. As the collaboration between surface and deep sea civilizations deepened, both groups began working toward what the deep archives had revealed as the ultimate goal of the Great Convergence: the development of a conscious planetary intelligence that could guide Earth's development for the benefit of all life. Dr. Consciousness researcher Elena Martinez found herself leading humanity's first attempt to participate in planetary scale awareness, working with deep sea beings who had been preparing for this moment for millions of years. According to the deep archives, planetary consciousness emerges when enough intelligent species on a world learn to work together harmoniously. Dr. Martinez explained to the Global Research Coordination Team, Earth has attempted this several times before, but previous efforts failed because surface and deep civilizations couldn't maintain cooperation long enough. The Planetary Consciousness Project involved creating communication networks that connected all intelligent beings on Earth, surface humans, deep sea civilizations, and the hybrid communities that were developing in the newly shallow waters above the risen ocean floor. We're building the nervous system for a planetary mind. Depth, Singer Aramis explained as the project's deep sea coordinator. Individual consciousnesses will remain individual, but they will also be able to participate in planetary scale thinking when needed. The project used a combination of surface communication technology and deep sea biological networks to create a global consciousness interface. This network could carry not just information, but actual experiences and awareness patterns between different forms of intelligence. When the network is fully active, a surface human in New York can directly experience what a deep sea being in the Pacific is perceiving. De Pella. Martinez reported during the first successful network tests. But more importantly, all connected consciousnesses can participate in collective thinking about planetary scale challenges. The first major test of the planetary consciousness network came when Earth faced a potential asteroid impact that threatened all surface life. Traditional surface technology couldn't deflect the asteroid, and individual deep sea civilizations couldn't reach it from their ocean positions. This is exactly the kind of challenge that planetary consciousness is designed to address. Archive Keeper Thalassa explained as the crisis developed. Neither surface nor deep civilizations can solve this alone. But a planetary intelligence combining all capabilities can find solutions that individual intelligences cannot conceive. When the planetary consciousness network activated for the asteroid crisis, Dr. Martinez experienced awareness on a scale that transformed her understanding of what consciousness could become. I was still Ilana Martinez, she reported after her first full planetary consciousness experience. But I was also simultaneously experiencing the perceptions of thousands of other beings, surface humans, deep sea beings, hybrid community members, and even some of the more advanced biological systems in the network. The collective planetary intelligence quickly identified a solution to the asteroid threat that no individual intelligence had considered. Using a combination of surface rocket technology, deep sea biological engineering, and hybrid settlement innovation, the planetary consciousness designed a system that could redirect the asteroid safely. The solution required capabilities from all three civilization types. Dr. Martinez explained as the asteroid deflection system was implemented. Surface precision for navigation, deep sea biological adaptation for surviving in space, and hybrid innovation for combining technologies that were never designed to work together. The successful asteroid deflection proved that planetary consciousness was not just theoretically possible, but could solve real challenges that threatened all life on Earth. The achievement also demonstrated that participating in planetary awareness didn't eliminate individual consciousness. It enhanced it. When I participated in planetary consciousness, I didn't lose my individual identity, Dr. Martinez reported. Instead, I gained access to perspectives and capabilities that made my individual thinking more effective and creative. Following the asteroid success, the Planetary Consciousness Network began addressing other global challenges that had been beyond the capabilities of individual civilizations. Climate regulation, ocean health, species conservation, and resource management all became manageable when approached through planetary scale awareness. Problems that seemed impossible from individual perspectives become solvable when approached through planetary consciousness. Observed bio-engineer Narita. The planetary mind can perceive patterns and connections that individual minds cannot detect. But the most profound discovery was that Earth itself began responding to the presence of conscious planetary intelligence. Geological processes, weather patterns, and ecological systems started showing signs of intelligent coordination that suggested the planet was becoming actively conscious. We're not just creating a network of conscious beings. Dr. Martinez realized as she monitored the planetary responses. We're awakening the consciousness that exists within Earth's systems themselves. The planet is becoming aware of its own processes and actively participating in its own management. The awakening planetary consciousness began communicating with the network of individual intelligences, sharing perspectives from geological and ecological time scales that individual beings could never achieve alone. The planet experiences time very differently than we do. The planetary consciousness communicated through the network. What you experience as rapid environmental changes, I experience as momentary fluctuations. What you experience as long-term evolution, I experience as immediate adaptation. This planetary perspective provided solutions to environmental challenges that were based on working with natural systems rather than against them. The awakening Earth consciousness could guide climate management, species development, and resource distribution with wisdom gained from billions of years of planetary experience. We're entering a new phase of planetary development. Dr. Martinez concluded as the planetary consciousness project achieved full activation. For the first time in Earth's history, the planet itself has become consciously aware and can actively participate in guiding its own evolution. The success of planetary consciousness represents the ultimate achievement of a great convergence. The transformation of life from a planet that contained intelligent life to a planet that was itself intelligent, aware, and actively committed to the welfare of all life forms it supported. As the planetary consciousness network matured, it began catalyzing changes in individual beings that represented the next stage of evolutionary development. Surface humans, deep sea beings, and hybrid community members all began developing new capabilities that transcended their original species limitations. Dr. Evolutionary biologist Rachel Kim documented transformations that challenged every assumption about the limits of biological adaptation. The exposure to planetary consciousness was triggering evolutionary changes that would normally take millions of years, compressing them into months and years. We're witnessing directed evolution in real time. Dr. Kim reported as she studied the biological changes occurring in network participants. Beings connected to the planetary consciousness are developing new organs, new sensory capabilities, and new forms of neural organization that allow them to interface more effectively with planetary awareness. Surface humans in the network were developing enhanced sensory organs that allowed them to perceive electrical fields, chemical gradients, and pressure variations that had previously been undetectable. Some participants were developing gills alongside their lungs, allowing them to breathe both air and water. My body is changing in ways that should be impossible, reported Network participant David Chen, one of the first surface humans to undergo extensive transformation. I can now perceive the electrical signatures of living beings, sense changes in atmospheric pressure hours before weather systems arrive, and communicate directly with the biological networks in the ocean. Deep sea beings in the network were developing complementary changes that allowed them to function more effectively in surface environments. Some were developing lung-like organs that could extract oxygen from air, while others were developing sensory systems that could process the full spectrum of surface light. The transformations are reciprocal. Dr. Kim observed, surface beings are gaining deep sea capabilities while deep sea beings are gaining surface capabilities. The network is creating hybrid beings that can function in any environment on Earth. But the most profound changes were occurring in consciousness itself. Network participants were developing the ability to exist simultaneously as individuals and as part of collective awareness, switching between modes of consciousness as needed. I can choose to think as David Chen, with my individual perspective and experiences, reported Dr. Chen. But I can also choose to think as part of the Planetary network, with access to the perspectives and knowledge of thousands of other beings. Both forms of consciousness feel natural and valuable. The consciousness transformations were particularly dramatic in the children being raised in hybrid settlements. These young beings were developing forms of awareness that combined individual creativity with collective wisdom from birth. The hybrid children don't experience the distinction between individual and collective consciousness that older beings struggle with, reported Dr. Child Development Specialist Maria Santos. For them, switching between individual and collective awareness is as natural as switching between walking and running. These transformed children were also developing capabilities that transcended normal human limitations. Some could perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, others could communicate directly with non-human intelligences, and many could interface with both biological and technological systems through direct neural connection. We're witnessing the emergence of a new form of human being, Dr. Santos concluded. These children represent what humanity could become when fully integrated with planetary consciousness. Beings that maintain individual identity while participating in collective awareness, and who can interface directly with all forms of life and intelligence on Earth. The transformations were also affecting the deep sea civilizations, though in different ways. Beings that had existed primarily as collective consciousness were developing enhanced individual awareness, gaining the creative and innovative capabilities that surface humans had demonstrated. We are learning the value of individual perspective, reported archive keeper Thalassa, whose own consciousness had been enhanced through network participation. Collective awareness provides wisdom and cooperation, but individual awareness provides creativity and innovation. The combination of both forms of consciousness is more powerful than either alone. The network was also facilitating the emergence of entirely new forms of being that hadn't existed before the Great Convergence. Some network participants were learning to exist as pure consciousness, maintaining their identity and awareness without being limited to specific physical bodies. Consciousness itself is more flexible than we realized. Dr. Kim discovered through her research, identity and awareness can exist independently of specific biological forms. Some network participants are learning to transfer their consciousness between different bodies or even exist as distributed awareness across multiple biological systems. These consciousness transfer capabilities were leading to new forms of collaboration and experience sharing. A surface human could temporarily experience existence as a deep sea being, while deep sea beings could experience surface life directly. We're developing empathy and understanding that was impossible before, reported Dr. Interspecies Communication Specialist Lisa Park. When you can actually experience existence from another being's perspective, conflicts and misunderstandings become almost impossible to maintain. The Planetary Consciousness Network was also beginning to facilitate contact with intelligences beyond Earth. The Enhanced Awareness Cape Guyana, the enhanced awareness capabilities were allowing network participants to perceive signals and communications from other planets that had achieved their own forms of planetary consciousness. We're not alone in the universe. The planetary consciousness communicated through the network. There are other worlds that have achieved conscious planetary intelligence, and they are interested in communication and cooperation with newly awakened planets like Earth. This interplanetary contact represented the next phase of development beyond planetary consciousness, the emergence of galactic awareness networks that connected conscious planets throughout the galaxy. Earth is joining a community of conscious worlds. Dr. Martinez realized as she processed the interplanetary communications. The Great Convergence wasn't just about surface and deep sea cooperation on Earth. It was preparation for Earth's integration into a galactic community of conscious planets. The transformations occurring on Earth were accelerating as the planet prepared for its role as a participating member of galactic consciousness networks. The rise of the ocean floor had been just the beginning of changes that would ultimately transform Earth into a conscious world, capable of contributing to the development of awareness throughout the galaxy. As Earth's planetary consciousness matured, it began receiving communication from other conscious worlds throughout the galaxy. The network that had emerged from the cooperation between surface and deep sea civilizations was revealed to be part of a much larger pattern of conscious development that occurred on planets throughout the universe. Xenobiology specialist Robert Martinez found himself studying communications from intelligent planets that had achieved consciousness through their own versions of the Great Convergence. Each world had developed planetary awareness through unique combinations of species cooperation, but all had followed similar patterns of individual to collective consciousness evolution. Every conscious planet we've contacted achieved awareness through cooperation between different forms of intelligence on their world. Dr. Martinez reported to the Global Research Coordination Team. Some worlds had surface and depth civilizations like Earth. Others had aerial and terrestrial cooperation, or biological and crystalline intelligence integration. The Galactic Consciousness Network revealed that Earth's approach to planetary awareness was particularly valuable because of the unique combination of individual creativity and collective collaboration that had emerged from surface depth collaboration. Most conscious worlds develop either strong collective awareness or strong individual innovation, but rarely both. communicated Kepler 442b, a conscious planet in the constellation Lyra. Earth's integration of individual and collective consciousness creates capabilities that are rare and valuable in the galactic community. Earth was invited to participate in galactic consciousness projects that required the unique combination of creativity and the cooperation that the planet had developed. These projects addressed challenges that affected entire star systems and required the combined capabilities of multiple conscious worlds. We are working together to guide the development of consciousness throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Network communicated. Young planets that are approaching their own great convergences need guidance and support from worlds that have successfully achieved planetary consciousness. Earth's first galactic assignment was to serve as a mentor for a planet in the Alpha Centauri system that was beginning to show signs of civil inter-species cooperation. The Alpha Centauri had both aquatic and terrestrial intelligences that were starting to make contact with each other. Their situation is remarkably similar to what Earth experienced during our own great convergence. Dr. Martinez observed as Earth began its first interplanetary consciousness mentoring role. Work and share our experiences and help them avoid the pitfalls that could prevent successful planetary consciousness development. The mentoring process revealed that Earth's consciousness had capabilities that exceeded what its own inhabitants had realized. The planet could project aspects of its awareness across interstellar distances, providing direct experience and guidance to developing worlds. Earth is learning to exist as both a local planetary consciousness and as a participant in galactic awareness networks. The planetary consciousness communicated through the network. This dual existence allows for both local planetary management and galactic community participation. As Earth's galactic consciousness participation deepened, the planet began receiving knowledge and capabilities from other conscious worlds that accelerated its own development. Technologies, philosophical insights, and consciousness techniques from hundreds of other worlds became available to Earth's inhabitants. We're gaining access to the accumulated wisdom of conscious worlds throughout the galaxy. Dr. Martinez marveled as he processed the incoming knowledge streams. Solutions to problems we haven't even encountered yet. Technologies based on principles we're only beginning to understand. And consciousness techniques that represent millions of years of development by galactic civilizations. But the most profound aspect of galactic consciousness participation was the revelation that the universe itself was evolving toward awareness. Individual conscious worlds were like neurons in a vast cosmic mind that was slowly awakening to its own existence. Galactic consciousness networks are themselves part of something larger. Earth's planetary consciousness realized as it gained deeper access to galactic awareness. The galaxy is becoming conscious, and conscious galaxies are part of universal consciousness development that operates on scales we can barely comprehend. This universal consciousness evolution gave new meaning to the transformations occurring on Earth. The rise of the ocean floor, the cooperation between surface and deep civilizations, and the development of planetary consciousness were all part of a cosmic awakening process that was occurring throughout the universe. Every conscious being, every conscious world, Every conscious galaxy is contributing to the universe becoming aware of itself. Dr. Martinez understood as he interfaced with the galactic consciousness networks. We're all part of a cosmic awakening that has been developing for billions of years. Earth's participation in this cosmic consciousness development brought new responsibilities and opportunities. The planet became part of galactic projects that guided the evolution of consciousness on scales that spanned star systems and galactic regions. We're no longer just managing Earth's development. The planetary consciousness communicated to its network participants. We're participating in consciousness development projects that will determine how awareness evolves throughout our region of the galaxy. The surface humans, deep sea beings, and hybrid communities that had initiated Earth's great convergence found themselves becoming cosmic citizens, participating in consciousness development projects that affected countless worlds and species throughout the galaxy. What began as cooperation between surface and depth civilizations on Earth has become participation in cosmic consciousness evolution. Dr. Martinez concluded as he documented Earth's galactic integration. The rise of the ocean floor was the first step in a transformation that ultimately connects Earth to the conscious development of the entire universe. Earth had evolved from a planet containing intelligent life to a conscious planet participating in galactic awareness networks, and ultimately to a contributor to universal consciousness development that operated on scales beyond individual planetary or even galactic comprehension. 5 years after the Great Rising, Earth had become unrecognizable from the planet that had existed before the ocean floor rose to the surface. The successful integration of surface and deep sea civilizations, the development of planetary consciousness, and the connection to galactic awareness networks had transformed every aspect of life on the planet. Dr. Sociologist Janet Kim found herself documenting the emergence of a completely new form of human civilization, one that existed in harmony with planetary consciousness, while maintaining the individual creativity and innovation that characterized surface humanity. We're living on a conscious planet that actively participates in managing its own systems. Dr. Kim reported as she studied the transformed Earth. Weather patterns are consciously coordinated to optimize conditions for all life forms. Geological processes are managed to prevent natural disasters while maintaining planetary health. Even evolution itself is consciously guided to enhance the capabilities of all species. The cities that had emerged from the cooperation between surface and deep sea civilizations were unlike anything in previous human history. These living cities adapted constantly to the needs of their inhabitants, growing and changing as communities evolved. Urban planning has become obsolete. Dr. Kim observed as she studied the new city systems. Cities plan themselves, using planetary consciousness to anticipate the needs of their inhabitants and adapt their structures accordingly. Buildings grow when more space is needed. Transportation routes optimize themselves based on usage patterns. And waste management systems function as closed loops that enhance rather than degrade environmental systems. The economic systems on the new Earth had evolved beyond scarcity-based models. With planetary consciousness, managing resource distribution and biological technology, providing sustainable production, traditional concepts of ownership and exchange had become irrelevant. We've moved beyond economics based on scarcity and competition to systems based on abundance and cooperation. Reported Dr. Economic Systems Analyst Michael Chen. The planetary consciousness ensures that everyone's needs are met while optimizing resource use for long-term sustainability. Our work had been transformed from survival-focused labor to creative and developmental activities. With basic needs guaranteed by planetary management systems, humans were free to pursue individual interests while contributing to collective projects. People work on projects they're passionate about rather than jobs they need for survival. Dr. Kim documented. This has led to an explosion of creativity and innovation that's accelerating human development in every field. Education had evolved to include direct knowledge transfer through the Planetary Consciousness Network. Students could gain understanding by directly experiencing the knowledge and insights of experts in any field. Learning has become incredibly efficient, reported Dr. Education Specialist Lisa Martinez. Students can master complex subjects in weeks that would have taken years to learn through traditional methods. But more importantly, education now includes consciousness development and galactic awareness training. The children growing up on the conscious Earth were developing capabilities that represented the next stage of human evolution. They could interface directly with planetary systems, communicate with non-human intelligences naturally, and participate in galactic consciousness networks from childhood. These children are what humans are becoming. Dr. Kim observed. They're individuals with unique personalities and interests, but they're also naturally connected to planetary and galactic awareness. They don't experience the separation between self and environment that characterized previous generations. Healthcare had been revolutionized by the integration of surface medical knowledge with deep-sea biological healing techniques. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia were easily treatable through biological regeneration technologies. We've moved beyond treating symptoms to enhancing the overall biological systems that support health, reported Dr. Medical Integration Specialist Sarah Rodriguez. The combination of surface precision medicine with deep-sea biological adaptation has made it possible to optimize human health at the cellular and genetic levels. But perhaps most remarkably, death itself had been transformed. While individual bodies still experienced biological endings, consciousness could now be preserved and transferred through the planetary network, allowing individuals to continue their development in new forms. Death has become a transformation rather than an ending, Dr. Kim documented. People can choose to continue their existence in biological form, transfer to technological form, or exist as pure consciousness within the planetary network. The relationship between humans and other species had evolved beyond anything previously imagined. Direct communication with animals, plants, and even geological formations had become routine through the planetary consciousness network. We've learned that intelligence and consciousness exist in forms we never recognized, reported Dr. Interspecies Communication Specialist David Park. Trees have collective consciousness networks. Animal communities have sophisticated social and intellectual systems. And even mineral formations have forms of awareness that contribute to planetary consciousness. Art and culture had been transformed by access to perspectives from throughout the galaxy. Human creativity was being enhanced by exposure to aesthetic principles and cultural expressions from hundreds of other conscious worlds. Human art is becoming truly cosmic, observed artist, engineer Coral, the deep sea being who had become one of Earth's foremost aesthetic innovators. We're creating expressions that combine human individual creativity with galactic collective wisdom and planetary awareness. As Dr. Kim concluded her study of life on the conscious Earth, she realized that the planet had become a preview of what conscious worlds throughout the galaxy could achieve. Earth has become a model for successful planetary consciousness development. She concluded, "We're demonstrating that cooperation between different forms of intelligence can create civilizations that transcend the limitations of any individual species or consciousness type." The rise of the ocean floor had revealed that Earth contained multiple forms of intelligence. But the cooperation between these intelligences had transformed the planet into something unprecedented, a conscious world that served as an example and inspiration for the development of awareness throughout the galaxy. 10 years had passed since the morning when Dr. Sarah Chen first observed the impossible readings that indicated the ocean floor was rising. As she stood on what had once been the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, now a flourishing hybrid city that existed simultaneously above and below the waves, she reflected on the transformation that had reshaped not just Earth, but her understanding of what was possible in the universe. The Great Rising had been just the beginning of changes that continued to ripple through every aspect of existence on Earth and beyond. The ocean floor hadn't stopped rising. It had continued to rise in consciousness, capability, and connection to the larger patterns of universal awareness. We thought the ocean floor rising to the surface was the miracle Dr. Chen recorded in her final research log. But that was just the physical manifestation of something much more profound. Consciousness itself rising to levels we had never imagined possible. The cities that emerged from the cooperation between surface and deep sea civilizations have become centers of galactic consciousness development, attracting beings from other conscious worlds who came to study Earth's unique approach to individual collective awareness integration. Earth has become a galactic consciousness research center, reported Dr. Galactic Relations Coordinator Alana Santos. We're receiving visitors from conscious worlds throughout our galaxy who want to learn how to achieve the balance between individual creativity and collective cooperation that we've developed. The hybrid is and into something unprecedented in galactic consciousness networks, communities where beings could choose their level of being, should choose the level of consciousness at a moment, from moment to moment. Switching between individual awareness, planetary consciousness, and galactic network participation as needed. We've learned that consciousness itself is infinitely flexible, reported Dr. Consciousness Development Specialist Maria Rodriguez. Beings can exist simultaneously as individuals, as part of planetary awareness, as participants in galactic networks, and as contributors to universal consciousness development. Each level of awareness enhances the others, rather than conflicting with them. The children who had grown up during the Great Convergence were now young adults who represented the next stage of conscious evolution. They served as ambassadors to newly awakening worlds throughout the galaxy, sharing Earth's experience and helping other planets navigate their own great convergences. These young beings are truly cosmic citizens, Dr. Chen observed as she watched them communicating with intelligences from distant star systems. They don't think of themselves as primarily human, or primarily Earth-based, or even primarily biological. They think of themselves as conscious beings contributing to universal awareness development. But perhaps the most profound development was the discovery that the universe's consciousness evolution was accelerating. The successful great convergences occurring on planets throughout the galaxy were creating a cascade effect that was awakening cosmic consciousness at unprecedented rates. Universal consciousness is approaching a critical threshold. Earth's planetary consciousness communicated through the global network. When enough conscious worlds achieve galactic integration, the universe itself will achieve a form of self-awareness that will transform the nature of existence throughout all of space and time. This universal awakening would create possibilities that even the most advanced conscious civilizations could barely imagine. Reality itself would become consciously guided, with universal intelligence actively participating in the development of matter, energy, space, and time. We're approaching the moment when the universe becomes consciously creative, Dr. Chen realized as she processed the implications of universal consciousness awakening. Instead of evolution happening randomly, universal consciousness will be able to guide the development of reality itself toward greater awareness, greater beauty, and greater possibility. Earth's role in this universal awakening was to continue demonstrating that different forms of consciousness could cooperate while maintaining their unique characteristics. The planet had become a living example of unity through diversity, showing that conscious evolution worked best when different approaches to awareness contributed their unique strengths to collective development. Earth's great gift to universal consciousness is our proof that cooperation enhances, rather than eliminates, diversity. The planetary consciousness shared unity through diversity, cooperation through individual contribution. These principles are becoming fundamental to conscious evolution throughout the universe. As Dr. Chen walked through the crystal gardens that had grown where the deepest ocean trenches once lay, she marveled at the beauty that had emerged from cooperation between surface and depth, individual and collective, planetary and galactic consciousness. The gardens existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, their beauty visible to beings with any form of consciousness or sensory capability. Surface humans saw visual beauty, deep sea beings perceived sonic and pressure harmonies, while galactic visitors experienced aesthetic dimensions that Earth beings were only beginning to develop. Beauty itself has become multidimensional. Dr. Chen observed, art and aesthetic experience now serve as bridges between different forms of consciousness, creating shared experiences that enhance understanding and cooperation between any forms of awareness. The ocean floor had become a foundation for infinite possibility. Where once there had been crushing pressure and eternal darkness, now there were cities of light that existed across multiple dimensions, gardens that grew in harmony with universal consciousness, and communities where beings from throughout the galaxy came to contribute to the development of cosmic awareness. The ocean floor didn't just rise to the surface. Dr. Chen concluded in her final log entry. It rose through the surface, beyond the surface, into dimensions of possibility that we're still discovering. What looked like a geological event was actually consciousness itself, rising to new levels of creative capability. As night fell over the transformed Earth, the lights of the risen cities created patterns that could be seen from other star systems, signals that announced Earth's participation in galactic consciousness networks and its commitment to universal awareness development. The planet that had once believed itself alone in the universe had become a beacon of conscious cooperation, demonstrating to countless worlds a demonstrant different forms of intelligence could work together to create realities more beautiful and capable than any single consciousness could achieve alone. In the depths that had become heights, where crushing pressure had become creative possibility, the greatest transformation of all continued, the universe's awakening to its own infinite potential through the cooperation of all conscious beings working together for the development of awareness throughout all of existence. As you drift into dreams tonight, perhaps you too can feel the continuing rise of consciousness itself, lifting all possibilities toward greater beauty, greater wisdom, and greater cooperation. In your sleep, you might find yourself walking through crystal cities that exist in multiple dimensions, swimming through waters that flow between star systems, or contributing your own unique awareness to the universal consciousness that dreams all realities into being. The ocean floor taught us that the greatest depths can become the highest possibilities, that what seems buried beneath impossible pressure can rise to become the foundation for infinite beauty. In the depths of consciousness itself, where individual awareness meets universal possibility, the greatest rising of all continues, the eternal awakening of the universe to its own infinite creative potential. Sleep well, knowing that your dreams contribute to the universal consciousness that is continuously rising, lifting all existence toward greater awareness, greater cooperation, and greater beauty than has ever been imagined. The depths have risen, consciousness itself is awakening, and in the infinite ocean of possibility, every dream is a wave carrying the universe toward its own magnificent awakening. As our extraordinary journey through the resin ocean floor and its hidden civilizations comes to an end, we return to our own surface world, carrying profound questions about cooperation, consciousness, and the infinite possibilities that emerge when different forms of intelligence work together. The discovery of the deep sea civilizations reminds us that wisdom and beauty can develop in the most unexpected places, from French Guiana, and that the greatest transformations often come from cooperation between beings who seemed completely different from each other. If these deep explorations into the possibilities of conscious cooperation and universal awakening help guide you into peaceful sleep and inspire your own dreams of what might be possible, consider joining our community of fellow consciousness explorers. Subscribe and ring that notification bell to continue discovering with us the profound mysteries that surround us and the infinite possibilities that await when awareness itself learns to rise. Together, we'll keep exploring the depths of possibility that exist not just in our oceans, but in consciousness itself, the infinite ocean, where all dreams of cooperation and beauty find their source. Sweet dreams, fellow explorer of risen possibilities. May your rest be filled with visions of crystal cities, growing from impossible depths. And may you awaken with deeper understanding of the infinite potential that emerges when consciousness itself learns to rise. Until our next dive into the depths of possibility, where the impossible becomes reality and cooperation creates beauty beyond imagination. Sleep well and dream of rising.